Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
Yeah, here I was all set to go, real good mood and everything, and then I looked at Fox, and there's a ceremony. Obama signed a 2-year budget deal. And I don't know, it just blows me up. It just ticks me off. It just is a reminder of how we've been lied to, about how we've been played for idiots, suckers. But worse than that is the damage all this has done to the country and is going to do. But the Republicans don't have to deal with the threat of a government shutdown anymore. For the next 2 years, the Republicans don't have to worry about being blamed for that. So all's well, folks. The Democrats won't blame the Republicans for shutting down the government. And the Democrats are no longer going to be talking about how senior citizens won't get their checks and veterans won't get their health care. Medicare patients won't get their health care, and Medicaid patients. Democrats can't say that for the next 2 years. Want to bet it won't be the end of this month until they start claiming it again, because it's in the playbook no matter what the reality is. Anyway, glad to have you here, folks. We've got a brand new week of broadcast excellence. You are tuned and glued to the EIB network, the Rush Limbaugh program. The telephone number is 800-282-2882. And the email address, lrushbo@eibnet.com. I have to give kudos to the Kansas City Royals and their 5-game World Series victory over the New York Mets. And what a series it was. The Kansas City Royals came from behind in 3 of these 5 games to win. And during the entire playoff run, I think it was 13 games, they came from behind to win. It might be 8. The numbers, I get them jumbled and run together. But regardless, it's a phenomenal feat, a phenomenal way to play baseball. But I have to tell you some observations. You know, sports has always been culturally an escape. It has been a way for people to escape the humdrum of the everyday life that they have. It's a 3-hour, now depending on the game you watch, 3.5-hour escape from reality. But in recent times, sports has really not offered a full escape because we've had to sit through lectures from sports commentators on gun control and gay marriage and civil rights and all of that. But this World Series, I have to tell you from top to bottom, was a wonderful escape, just like sports should be. There were no lectures between innings or in the pregame or postgame by vaunted sports commentators lecturing America on how they were misbehaving or not thinking the right way. Barack Obama was nowhere to be seen. Unlike the Super Bowl, there wasn't a pre-series interview with Obama, and he didn't put on a pair of mom jeans, go out there and throw out the first pitch looking like a girl. He wasn't anywhere near it. It was baseball. And it was incredibly exciting baseball. And look, I don't want to put too much in this. I mean, it's sports, as I say. It's an escape from reality, and I don't want to attach too much to this. But you know, I am an observer, a quite keen observer of things cultural and social and political. The Royals won this World Series because they trust their players. You know, Ned Yost never changed lineup. From the first day of the playoffs to the last night, the lineup was, other than the pitcher and designated hitter. The pitcher had to hit in the National League Park, but the lineup was the same. The players were the same. The bullpen was the same. The catcher, Salvador Perez, MVP, calls his own game with the pitchers. You don't see him look into the dugout much for each pitch sign. He calls it. As a general rule, it's not always the case, the Royals don't get bunt signs. They do that on their own. And as a general rule, they don't get steal signs. They steal bases on their own based on their feel for the game and based on scouting reports. Brian, you'll be interested in this. You know, one of the major lines of emphasis in the scouting report the Royals got before the World Series. Make Lucas Duda throw the ball. Lucas Duda's the Mets first baseman who threw the ball away as Eric Hosmer attempts to score from third on a routine ground ball to third base of David Wright last night. The tying run. Scouting, it's right there. Make Lucas Duda throw the ball. Then the next one is make the catcher Travis Darno throw the ball. So they're well schooled, and then they're trusted to play the game with what they know and their instincts. Hosmer went home on his own last night. That was his decision to make, about two-thirds down the line. They've learned how to play the game. I mentioned last week that the Royals, for the longest time, are not even a professional baseball team. Payroll was so low. Following the 1985 World Series, the death of Mr. Kaufman, who owned the team, it totally changed the structure and the budget, everything about the way the team operated. You could really honestly say it wasn't a professional baseball team. It was AAA with a couple of major league players in the roster, and those always ended up leaving in free agency because the Royals' decision, and they had some financial concerns at the time, just not going to pay them. But Dayton Moore arrives from Atlanta in 2006, and everything changes, and they reinstill the development league. They reinstall the scouting department and build it back up, minor league system, develop their own players, and it just paid off. It really, you got a winning team without an authoritarian manager, without the benefit of universally acclaimed superstar. Well, Wade Davis is a superstar. But the Royals as a team are better than the individual parts. George Brett said after the game last night that he thinks this team's better than the 1985 team. He thinks this team, because of bullpen depth and speed, and the way they play the game, would have beaten the last Royals World Series team, which was 1985. And their payroll was about $115 million versus the Los Angeles Dodgers payroll of $300 million, and the Dodgers were eliminated in the first round by the Mets. Now, there was a controversial decision last night for a Mets fan, and that was Matt Harvey, known as the Dark Knight. This is a long, involved story. To understand everything about what happened last night, you have to know a little bit about the history of Matt Harvey and his Tommy John surgery and his agent, Scott Boras, and trying to put a limit of 180 innings pitched on the entire season. And anyway, that got blown. Here's the bottom line. Harvey was unhittable. Harvey just owned the Royals through 8 innings. Fox's cameras, instead of lecturing the country on gun control, Fox's cameras were pointed at the Mets dugout while the Royals were hitting in the what would have been in the top of the? No, it was after the. Is going into the top of the ninth, and Matt Harvey is sitting on the bench, and the pitching coach walked over and told him he was done. And you could read Matt Harvey's lips, said, "No way, no way." And he got up and he walked over to the manager, Terry Collins. "I'm not coming out. I'm not coming out." And the manager's got 40-plus years of experience in baseball, Terry Collins, 26-year-old. Young man, impetuous, just riding a high, and talked his way into staying in the game. When the manager wanted to pull him and go to they've got an ace in the bullpen, a guy named Familia. And Harvey talked his way into staying in the game, and we know what happened. Those of you watching it, the Royals tied it in the top of the ninth, and Harvey had to come out. And the debate throughout New York today is, gee whiz, what was Collins thinking? This is a no-win situation. If Harvey gets the side out, it's the greatest managerial move in the world, investing in his player, leaving the player in. The player wanted to stay in, but given what happened, the naysayers, what's this guy doing? You never listen to a 26-year-old kid? Of course the 26-year-old kid wants to stay in the game. You got to follow the book. You got to follow your instincts. You got a bullpen ace. You got to go to the bullpen. It's unfortunate because it was such... It was a situation where there was, no matter what happened, there was going to be, at some point, a no-win. But at any rate, it's a great World Series, and I just tip my hat to the Royals and both teams for making it really entertaining and good. This is the first time, I worked for the Royals for 5 years. And when you work for a sports team, you lose some of the ingredients necessary to be a fan because it's your job. And like any other job, there are parts of it you don't like, and you just want to get out of there. And over my last year or so, I was praying they wouldn't make the playoffs just so I could have a normal day start in October rather than November. I mean, homestands are 18 to 20-hour days. At any rate, this last year and this, but really this year, was the first year since 1983 that I have really been following baseball and been into it. And I'll tell you something else. I went and played golf yesterday afternoon while the Steelers were on. That hasn't happened in, I don't know, 30 years. Steelers on Sunday, and if I'm able, I'm parked in front of a TV. Yesterday, screw it. Went out and played golf. So we all undergo transformations of some kind. But anyway, I had to kick off today with congratulating everybody involved and sharing with you my observations about what a fun sporting event it was to watch. And I would have felt that way no matter who won. It was I would have been disappointed had the Royals not won. I was secretly hoping the Mets would win yesterday, take it back to Kansas City so the Royals could win it in Kansas City in front of home fans. But I said, no, you win it when you can. You don't. And they did. And the way they did it, I mean, there's nothing new in baseball. Everything that happens today has happened before in baseball. But there are stages. And these come from behind wins, which seems so common. And part of the Royals' recipe is unique to me. I have not seen a team this adept at rallying in the late innings after being totally dominated. Had 4 hits going into the 9th inning last night. They looked horrible against Harvey. And then, the top of the 9th, here's Matt Harvey, owns it and walks the first hitter and then gives up into what happened? What happened between the end of the 8th and the top of the 9th to Matt Harvey? Maybe nothing. But the manager yanked him. Should have yanked him after the walk instead of leaving Hosmer in. But that's what's great about baseball. You talk about all this stuff at the end of the day. It doesn't really matter. What matters is Obama signed this 2-year budget deal. And once again, Republican voters have been mocked and laughed at and made fun of after 2 consecutive elections, 2010 midterms, 2014 midterms, and you might even say the 2012 presidential race. You know, there is an analogy. Folks, there is an analogy. Just a second here. There is an analogy. I have a story here. What is it? The Jeb Can Fix It tour launches with high hopes. ABC News, Jeb Bush launches his Jeb Can Fix It tour today. The embattled Republican presidential candidate is beginning the tour in his home state of Florida, traveling the state with 3 events in 3 different cities. He'll begin in Tampa, then head to an event near Orlando, and end with a town hall in Jacksonville. After that, he'll head to South Carolina tomorrow and then start a 2-day-long swing in New Hampshire, where his first bus tour will begin. The Jeb Can Fix It tour and the release of his e-book, Reply All Today, are all in an effort to jumpstart a campaign that many say has been flailing after tumbling poll numbers and a widely panned debate performance. Okay, now look. You know, I've told you this is very hard. To be critical of people that you know and that you like. On a personal level, ladies and gentlemen, the Bush family has been nothing but gracious and nice and supportive of me. I do not have one bad thing to say about them as people, their character, human beings, and so forth. They are quality people. But it doesn't prevent me from observing that it never has appeared to me that Jeb really wants this. Jeb has always appeared to me, even from the first days of the campaign, has always appeared to me as a stand-in for powers behind the scene who want back in. I don't know the names. I mean, you might think I'm talking about Karl Rove. I'm not talking about just Karl Rove. There's all kinds of, and the donors, but there are others. You know, it's a rare place, power in Washington, rarefied air when you're president and everybody working for the president breathed the same rarefied air. And once you've tasted it, once you've inhaled it, once you have exhaled it, you want it back. There's something addictive to it. But Jeb has always seemed like the front man for the people behind the scenes who really want it. And it's the people behind the scenes concocting all of these marketing plans and campaign strategies to get Jeb there. How long has this been going? The first debate was August 3rd. Mr. Snerdley, if you had to peg a beginning point of this campaign when Jeb had announced and all the others had announced, how old is this campaign? Does this campaign go back to June? Is it a year and a half? Okay, the campaign is a year and a half old. And then Trump got in and blew everything up. Trump got in when? Trump got in May. Since May, has Jeb Bush, has Jeb Bush polled over 10% since May? That's my point. Whatever the high point, wherever it was months ago, and whatever it was, and he's at 5 or 6, and he's holding steady. Now, after all of these many months, remember Clint Eastwood's line, "Man's got to know his limitations." I mean, you have to assess where you are in things. And campaigns and polling data, whatever else they are expressions of public opinion. And it's clear up to this point that there isn't a whole lot of energy behind the Jeb Bush campaign among Republican voters or people who participate in Republican polls. And yet, it's kind of like Hillary. We're working on another launch, the Jeb Can Fix It tour. What is it? What does it say about these two, Hillary and Jeb? They have to constantly relaunch, reboot their campaigns. What does that fact alone tell us? I got to take a break here. I guess I need to correct myself. Jeb announced on June 15th. Trump announced on June 16th. That surprises me. I'm like you. I thought Trump was in there. Who, Jeb? Oh, yeah. Well, I think that announcement was delayed because there's something to do with funding, PACs, legal filings, and that sort of stuff, yeah. But, yeah, he was running before June the 15th. Trump, for some reason, I thought that was May. Just to show you how time goes. What did I tell, folks? What did I tell you? Not that you needed to be told, by the way. It's so patently obvious. Here we go from Breitbart. CNBC debate executive worked in the Clinton White House for Al Gore. What did I tell you? The very next day, I said these are hit people. These are people from the Clinton campaign that ran that CNBC debate. And no matter where you go in the media, you're going to run into Clinton hacks. Stephanopoulos is over at ABC. They're everywhere. They're at CNN. They are at, you get the Cuomo's over there at CNN. You've got people over at CNBC. This guy's name is Brian Steele, Senior Vice President of Communications, CNBC, the second highest ranking network official at Wednesday night's debate, described by an insider as the executive on hand for the debate. He worked in the Bill Clinton White House as a domestic policy advisor to Al Gore. His White House gig was just one of 3 jobs he held in the Clinton administration. These Clinton hacks are everywhere. And they go from government to media. They're at CBS, ABC, NBC. They're at CNN, CNBC, MSNBC. They're everywhere. And there was one, the CNBC debate, exactly as I told you, the whole thing put together, planned, and orchestrated by Clinton war room hacks. Not only that, but the wife, you ready for this? The wife of the CNBC debate executive, who had 3 different jobs in the Clinton White House, is a Hillary Clinton donor. The CNBC executive who oversaw the catastrophic Republican presidential debate in Colorado is married to a Hillary Clinton 2016 donor. CNBC Vice President of Communications Brian Steele, the executive on hand at Wednesday night's debate. He's married to Eileen Limbaugh, the managing partner at New York City's Lewis, Jones, Avalon, Avales, LLP law firm. Limbaugh donated $2,700 to Hillary for America on June 23rd, just 4 months before the CNBC. Of course, this is not a surprise. I'm just confirming. These are not journalists in any way, shape, manner, or form. They're hacks. They're party hacks, disguised as journalists or disguised as lawyers, disguised as think tank analysts and senior fellows and whatever the heck else. No shock, surprise whatsoever. The Republican campaigns have agreed to cut the Republican National Committee out of the debate process and instead negotiate directly with the networks. Well, fine and dandy, you're still negotiating with Clinton hacks. I mean, even after this, it's like I told you, after the CNBC debate, all these stories about how embarrassed everybody was and how negative the coverage seemed to be. Don't kid yourself. They look at this as mission accomplished. Because the questions were what were important, and the questions were the bullets, the questions were the attacks. The answers were incidental to the questions were designed to explain to the viewers who these Republicans are. The questions were what was used to be destructive. And the icing on the cake was however they were answered. And even now, when the Republicans object to it, the drive-bys are now saying Republicans are whining and they're childish and they can't take a little heat and they can't take a little adversity. So they got exactly what they want, and they're applauding themselves behind this. Wherever they go to congregate, whatever bar, restaurant, locations they visit, I guarantee you they're all patting each other on the back for what happened at the CNBC debate. Now, the Republican presidential campaigns agreed yesterday to cut the RNC out of the debate negotiating process and instead deal directly with the networks, moderating the debates. Corey Lewandowski, the campaign manager for Trump, confirmed to Breitbart News on Sunday the biggest consensus of 5 separate points the GOP campaign agreed on was cutting the RNC out of the negotiations with the networks, as the campaigns would each like to negotiate with the networks directly. In response to the revelation the RNC will be cut out of the process, Sean Spicer, the RNC chief point man on handling the debates until now, said the RNC nevertheless stands ready to help the candidates in any way they can. Now, Ben Carson's campaign suggested that it all take place in social media. And I forget some of the other suggestions that some of the others, some things about green rooms and some things about questions or, I mean, if you're going to do a debate on the economy, make sure it's all on the economy. Risky territory when you start making agreements with people who are where they are to get Hillary Clinton elected president. And that's who they're talking to. I don't care who they're talking to at whatever network. They are talking to people who have open communications to the Clinton campaign, the Democrat Party in general. So we'll see what comes of all that. When the next debate's soon, right? 10 days or so, something like that, on the Fox Business Network. So we'll see how that plays out. Did you see what Bill Gates did? See what Bill Gates said? This is one of the craziest, most nonsensical things I have ever in my life heard. I understand why he said it, but it is just over the top unbelievable. Bill Gates says that capitalism cannot save us from climate change. Bill Gates says that socialism is the only thing that can save us from climate change. The world's richest man, Bill Gates, has said that the private sector is too selfish and inefficient to produce effective energy alternatives to fossil fuels. While announcing his plan to spend $2 billion of his own money on green energy during an interview with The Atlantic, the founder of Microsoft called on fellow billionaires to help make the U.S. fossil-free by 2050 with similar philanthropy. Bill Gates said there is no fortune to be made, even if you have a new energy source that costs the same as today's and emits no CO2. It will be uncertain compared with what's tried and true and already operating at unbelievable scale and has gotten through all the regulatory problems. Without a substantial carbon tax, there is no incentive for innovators or plant buyers to switch. Since World War II, still Gates speaking, since World War II, U.S. government R&D. This is just mind-boggling to me. Bill Gates, since World War II, United States government research and development has defined the state of the art in almost every area. The private sector is in general inept. This is Twilight Zone territory for me. This is surreal. U.S. government R&D has defined the state of the art in almost every area. The private sector is in general inept. He said the climate problem has to be solved in rich countries. China and the U.S. and Europe have to solve CO2 emissions. And when they do, hopefully, they will make it cheap enough for everyone else. China? China and the U.S. and Europe? Europe's being overrun at the moment, and I doubt that they have much on the mind over there other than self-preservation, but nevertheless, CO2 emissions are a straw dog anyway. CO2 emissions, greenhouse gas, all of this is made up, phony baloney, good time rock and roller hoax material. So why is Bill Gates signing on to this? There is an explanation for this. But man, oh man, he has so signed on to it. He goes out and makes these patently ridiculous statements. Let me share with you a theory that I have, ladies and gentlemen. It could be wrong. I think every person who has earned or has inherited or who has acquired, whatever manner, immense wealth is scared to death of losing it. The entrepreneur who slaves away and eventually hits the big payday, one of the first thoughts is, gosh, I hope somebody doesn't come along and take this away from me. And the fear manifests itself in the form of government fear. Gee, I hope they don't come up with a wealth tax. Gee, I hope they don't start confiscating everybody's money because they've so spent themselves into debt. I mean, these are ongoing, constant fears. Gee, I hope the peasants with pitchforks leave me alone and don't storm my castle. I don't care what it is. These super wealthy people have a fear, or did at one time, of losing it. More, not having it taken away, have it taken from them. And it is that belief of mine in that theory which I have come up with to explain why people like Gates and Buffett and a number of these other super billionaires talk like Marxist liberals all the time. It is to keep people away from their money. It is to send the message, hey, we don't threaten you. Leave me alone. I'm spending all my money on philanthropy. I'm giving money to AIDS. I'm giving money to Africa. I'm giving money to global warming. I'm giving money to this. I'm giving money to the arts. I'm giving money to support gay marriage and transgender. Leave me alone. It's about assuaging the fear that somebody's going to come for their money. It's about adopting a public persona that makes their wealth okay. And the peasants with the pitchforks will leave them alone and not come for their money because they're good people and they care about people. Like Gates is building mosquito nets for malaria. You want to wipe out malaria? Bring back DDT and punt Rachel Carson. But no, can't get. There needs to be an ongoing problem so I can have ongoing philanthropy, so that I can have ongoing demonstrations of my good works. How in the world do you reconcile? What could he be thinking of here? Since World War II, U.S. government R&D has defined the state of the art. In almost every area, the private sector's in general inept. There's only one thing that I can think that he might be talking about, and that's nuclear weapons technology. That was R&D. That was government-sponsored. It was not still private sector people who did it, but it was under the auspices of government. What else is he talking about? Don't tell me GI Bill and this guy. That's not R&D. I mean, don't give me legislation. What other R&D? Did they invent the cell phone? Oh, NASA space program? R&D. Moon show. Okay, all right. But who did it really? You ask me, Grumman, Northrop, McDonnell, Douglas did it all. It was the government that sponsored it and gave them the money, but where did the work actually take place? Where was all the entrepreneurism? It wasn't G14 people that put the nuclear bomb together or got us to the moon or built the space shuttle. If you want to praise the government, go ahead, but to say that the private sector is in general inept? Does Gates think that his $78 billion fortune came from outside the private sector, maybe? I don't know. Anyway, there's a companion story to this. The world's most polluted places. Now, Bill Gates says when it comes to climate change and global warming, which of course is a hoax, which is phony, that's the big thing. Somebody as smart as Gates has to know that this is falderall. Yet he signed on to it, and I submit to you for the same reasons. Get the geek, nerd crew on your side, loving you and support. It's a bunch of millennial young leftists. And then keep the peasants with pitchforks away from you by removing your billions as a threat to them, because you're a good guy. But Gates says when it comes to global warming and that hoax, capitalism is the problem and socialism is the answer? Well, we can test this. We can test this. We have socialist and communist governments all over the world. And we can take a look at how well they're doing battling pollution, CO2 emissions, and climate change. Let's do that when we come back. Okay, now look, we're actually engaged in a kind of fruitless exercise here. Because look, there is no climate change. Okay? There isn't any. I mean, not man-made. There's no CO2 greenhouse gas. The temperature hasn't gone up in 18, 20 years. Again, folks, note that the predictions for this are all 50 years from now, 30 years, 75, 100 years. They're not predicting next month, next week, next year. Because they know nothing's going to happen that they can claim responsibility for. They've got to lay these predictions way off when you're no longer here. They want your tax money now. They want you to agree to big government, global government now. And they're using fear. But they never predict climate change and its massive impact next week, next year. Another problem today, the ice at the Antarctic mysteriously increasing. That doesn't fit the computer models. They're all banned. But anyway, the point is, Gates says that capitalism can't save us from climate change. There isn't any climate change. So what is this? What, it's almost a non-starter. It's an interview he gave in The Atlantic. It's a very long piece. And in it, he says the private sector is in general inept. It can't save us. Capitalism can't save us from something that isn't happening. May be true. But if you continue to promulgate the hoax, then, of course, you're going to make people believe, well, capitalism can't save it. No, because in these people's view, capitalism caused it. Capitalism is at the root of all evil, including climate change. But where there is socialism, let's take a look. September 12, 2007, most recent data. I know it's 8 years ago, but there hadn't been a whole lot of change here. This is the world's most polluted places. The top two are in China. The next two are India, then Peru. The next two, Russia, then Ukraine, Azerbaijan, and Zambia. There isn't a capitalist economy in any of these places. Bill Gates says capitalism can't save us from climate change. Well, we have a bunch of socialist and communist governments, and they're the most polluted places on earth. They are the filthiest. They have more CO2 emissions. All that. These places, according to Gates, ought to be leading the way. But it's preposterous. The whole thing is preposterous anyway, because we have a non-event that we're now going to debate what's better to fix it. Socialism or capitalism. So you see, the real game here is to once again diminish and attack capitalism and get everybody, or as many people as you can, aligned against that. And use up here this non-existent hoax of climate change. Since there isn't any climate, how can capitalism ever claim to fix it when it doesn't exist in the first place, you see? So it's kind of a setup to begin with. But aside from all the things that Bill Gates is quoted as saying in this piece still boggle my mind. I don't care. We have such a good roster of calls on hold. I can't wait to get to them. That'll happen in the next hour. What is it about? I know I gave you the answer, but it's still, here's a guy, perhaps capitalism's biggest winner. Bill Gates running around flipping it off, flipping at the bird, by talking about how it is in general inept. At any rate, my friends, I will shelve my disgust. And we will resume following a break here at the top of the hour. Once again, in our usual good mood. Hang in there. Hi, how are you? Great to have you here, folks, as we kick off another week of broadcast excellence, authored by me. Your guiding light through good times and bad. Rush Limbaugh here at 800-282-2882. If you want to send an email, have at it. lrushbo@eibnet.com. Here's something for these. By the way, I've got a lot of emails. How can Gates be so dumb? How can a guy be so dumb? Here he is, capitalism's biggest winner. I don't think he's dumb at all. He can't be dumb. There's something else going on that explains this. He's not stupid. Capitalism versus socialism is not hard to understand. And it's very easy for somebody like Gates to realize what happened to him could not happen under socialism. It'd all be taken from him. So he's not, there's something else going on here. And I'm pretty sure that I've got a good handle on it. It's all about keeping the various powers that could take his money away from him. It's about building a moat around him and his money, and creating love and respect and admiration for him so that he gets stamp of approval. It's okay if he has a lot of money because he does good things with it. They leave him alone. Buffett, same thing, I think. I mean, it's obviously more complicated than that, but I mean, that's the simple explanation here. But let's play a little bit here on this whole idea of his that the private sector's inept in dealing with climate change. Now, even if there is global warming, and I know there isn't, but I want to play the hypothetical game here. Even if there is global warming, and if you fervently believe that, and given what I just shared with you about the filthiest places on this planet, and every damned one of them is either run by a dictatorship or communism or socialism. We have 2 cities in China. 1 city in India, 1 in Peru, 2 in Russia, 1 in Ukraine, Azerbaijan, Zambia. We're not dealing with capitalist countries here, which are the filthiest, the most polluted places on earth. So the idea that socialism and big government is where all the research and development is, and good big governments where all the good ideas, it's caca, okay? So even if there is global warming, and again, I assure you there isn't, wouldn't the best solution be to bring back as much manufacturing as possible to the U.S.? After all, we are the most advanced at cleaning up our messes. And that, by the way, is another of the many gold stars that attach to capitalism. Capitalist countries are better at cleaning up their messes than any other type or form of government out there for a whole bunch of obvious reasons. We are the most advanced at protecting the environment. And some of you might, well, yeah, but that wouldn't be the case, Rush, if it weren't for government and all these regulations. Because these companies, Rush, they'd pollute everything. They'd kill every customer they got. They'd poison every river, and they'd do everything they could to destroy it. Right. That's exactly what capitalist companies want to do, is kill their customers. I can think of no better business plan. I'd like to go to Harvard Business School, and I'd go for my doctorate on the thesis that American corporations are striving to kill their customers. I'll bet you I'd get an A from Harvard. I mean, how nonsensical is that? But how many people, hey, look at these drug companies, you see how much the prices are going up? And then they're just gouging people. You know why prices have gone up in drugs? Obamacare. Can anybody say Obamacare? Obamacare's even the CBO. Back in 2010, the original scoring warned everybody, if you do this, pharmaceutical prices are going to skyrocket, and they have, and they are. And you got every liberal Democrat running around out there complaining, whining, moaning about the drug companies gouging people. They're just following the regulations and the law as written under Obamacare. Yes, I've got backup for this. Look, you have to trust some of this stuff. I've got it right here if you want, but it's going to delay getting to other things. But I'm not making this up. No point in making this stuff. If this could be easily refuted, why would I make it up? Obamacare is why health care has gone up. Obamacare is why health insurance has gone up. The new enrollment period has started now, and it's an absolute disaster coming up later here in the stack. Government doesn't solve anything. Government makes messes and then sets itself up as the fixer, and in the process makes the mess even bigger. Anyway, back to my original point. If there's global warming, wouldn't it make sense to bring back as much manufacturing to the U.S. as possible? We're the most advanced at protecting the environment. It's capitalism that allows us to have such high pollution standards, meaning capitalism is what permits. Actually, capitalism requires that these messes be cleaned up in order to stay in business and prosper and grow. But there's no refuting this either. You can go to any communist paradise you want, measure the pollution against that here in the United States. A capital is not even close, per capita or however else you want to imagine it. I have always maintained the problem in the world is the unequal distribution of capitalism. I just think it's nonsensical to watch all of this stuff, and it just gives you an idea of some of the powerful forces that we are all up against here. When somebody like Gates comes around, starts bashing capitalism, I mean, that's made to order for every college student out there to just soak up, believe, and then start reciting. I mentioned to you, and Snerdley didn't believe this, that after the CNBC debate, the next day, I said, there's no shame. They're not embarrassed. I don't care what the news stories say. I don't care. The CNBC people respond. And by the way, we've learned that the guy that ran the CNBC debate worked in the Clinton White House, 3 different jobs for Al Gore. They're all Clinton hacks, exactly as I told you. And as far as they're concerned, that debate was mission accomplished. And I mentioned to you in the last hour that an evolving narrative now is how the Republicans are a bunch of whining losers who can't handle a little of adversity. And that narrative is starting to bubble up out there. This is last night and this morning, CNN, Fox News Channel. Bunch of different people. Here goes. Listen.
The whining over the CNBC debate is far from over.
They seem to be a little whiny.
Republicans need to stop whining about these debates.
A lot of them don't want to appear to be whining.
Stop whining about tough questions.
It's probably best not to whine too much.
80% of those voices are the Fox News channel. And you think CNBC and the rest of the drive-bys are embarrassed? You think they're ashamed by their performance at CNBC? Hell no, folks. They're applauding themselves. Mission accomplished. No less than Dan Rather on CNBC. Well, he's actually on CNN. He's on reliable sources yesterday. And he was defending CNBC, but of course he would. I mean, if you forge documents for a news story and think you're telling the truth, you wouldn't have any problem with what CNBC did. Brian Stelter says, you've been on these stages so many times, Dan. You've been a moderator so much. You've done this more than anybody. You are the seasoned professional at moderating debates. What would your review of the moderators of the CNBC debate be?
Look, they didn't do it perfectly. It wasn't their best night. But I think we have to see clearly what's at play here. That candidates on the right side of the political spectrum, a large part of their constituency loves attacks on the press. It's part of the political game that, particularly with those on the right side of the political spectrum, they're going to attack the press because a large part of their constituency likes it. And that's what this is about. By and large, a reporter's job is to separate bullshine from brass tacks. And by and large, that's what the press does.
Such caca. I mean, it's all just caca from top to bottom. Well, they didn't do it perfectly. It wasn't their best night, but I think we've seen clearly what's at play here, and that is the candidates on the right side of the spectrum are pretty much crazy. It was on display, and I think the CNBC did a rather good job. Partisan political operatives generally do a good job. Screw it, Dan. I'm just showing you that there's no regret. Now back to Jeb Bush. Weekly Standard. Jeb campaign resets for fifth time. Yep, exactly. Last hour, I asked, by the way, I looked into this. Jeb's high point was at 19% in July. It's been downhill since then. 19 points was the top polling number that Jeb, preference in a presidential primary election poll that Jeb has achieved. It's been downhill ever since. And there have been a bunch of different reboots, just like there were with Hillary. Now, the press does not catalog Hillary. They just report Hillary Clinton with a new presidential announcement. They never tell you it's her fourth or fifth. And they never ask why Hillary needs to constantly reboot. But here's the Weekly Standard. Jeb campaign resets for the fifth time. Since the two-term Republican first began exploring a presidential bid at the beginning of the year, Bush campaign has seen 5 shakeups, 5 resets, or 5 shifts in course. Before we get to number 9, grab soundbite number 20. Here is Jeb this morning in Tampa on the fifth reboot, which is called the I Can Fix It Tour.
We need a president who fixes America's standing abroad. I can fix it. After 7 years of massive deficits, historic debt, and a president who vetoes defense spending because he wants more reckless spending, we need a president who fixes our budgetary mess. I can fix it. I know I can fix it because I've done it.
There we go. And there goes the political resume again. I don't know. I don't mean to sigh, folks. That sigh was not in frustration at anything. I'm just exhaling CO2 for climate change. I mentioned during that last debate, every time Jeb started citing what he had done as governor, I practiced. One time I did yell. I said, don't you understand this is why you're not doing well? People want outsiders, political professionals, well-oiled political people, politicians. This is not what people in this primary want. You are killing yourself by telling everybody what you did as governor. It doesn't matter. Politicians doing what they do very well has led to what everybody thinks is a crisis-related mess. I can fix it. I know I can fix it because I've done it. Okay. That takes us to David Brooks. David Brooks, who, as you know, after having dinner with Barack Obama back in 2009 and after witnessing the sharp crease in his slacks, proclaimed that alone told him that Obama was going to be great. David Brooks on Meet the Press, the roundtable yesterday, F. Chuck Todd, the host, said, "What evidence, David Brooks, is there that Jeb Bush is the most electable?"
If I were him, I'd lead with his strength and just say, hey, I'm boring. I'm boring. Is our problem in Washington we don't have enough boringness? No, we got too much craziness. And so I'm going to be your sedative. I'm going to be laxative, I guess. I'm going to calm you down. I like the slogan that they're adjusting to, I can fix it. And so I think he just ought to say that and be himself.
Jeb Bush should sell himself as the laxative candidate. Man, that's appealing, isn't it? And David Brooks, he's establishment insider. The establishment insiders were given a heads up on the new I Can Fix It theme. And you heard Brooks there endorse the I Can Fix It theme. But let me ask you a question. Here's David Brooks. I mean, this guy is considered brilliant conservative, New York Times conservative columnist. And his suggestion is, if you're boring, like Jeb is, go out and admit it. Hey, I'm boring. Is our problem we've got too much boring people? No, we've got too much craziness. I'm not crazy. I'm boring. Let me be your laxative. Let me be your sedative. I can fix it. How would that fly out there? Ron Fournier on Fox News Sunday, again during the roundtable. Let's see, the presentation was just Roberts. John Roberts was filling in for Chris Wallace. So one of the things that Jeb is doing, he's going hard after Marco Rubio. That presentation he made last weekend to supporters in Houston included a 112-page PowerPoint presentation in which they said about Rubio, quote, "Those who have looked into Marco's background in the past have been concerned with what they found." And this is true. They leaked that 112-page election manual. Anyway, here's what Fournier had to say about it.
Bushes aren't quitters, but when you watch him deal with a debate process filled with loud candidates, filled with loud reporters, a very vapid and vain political process that we're kind of in now, he does strike me as, the Charlie Rose candidate in a Charlie Brown world.
What is that? A Charlie Rose candidate in a Charlie Brown world. Do you have the slightest idea what that means? You do? Charlie Rose can't. Wait. So Charlie Rose is erudite, intellectual, sophisticated, establishment cream of the crop. That's where I was missing this. That's what I didn't get. Okay. So what, America's constipated? Jeb can fix it? Or is he saying that Charlie Rose is constipated and needs a laxative? I'm getting confused now over all this. Let me go to the phones as I try to get myself back into some sense of equilibrium here. We're going to start in Kansas City. This is Lisa. Great to have you on the program. Hi.
Hi, Rush. I just wanted to call in and thank you so much for all the comments and your coverage of the Royals while they've been going through the end of their season and their playoffs. We are just absolutely thrilled here to have them the world champions, and just like you, and I've listened to you forever and the quality programming you do, the Royals organization, they're more than world champions. They are quality from the top to the very bottom, and we're just so absolutely thrilled here. The city is on fire today. I've been out shopping, and every single place everybody's dressed in blue, and we have schools that are canceled for tomorrow. The whole city's going to be at the parade tomorrow. So thank you so much.
Lisa, confirm something for me, if you will, since you are there. You actually live in Kansas City?
Yes, I grew up here.
Okay. I have a news story that quotes the police that there have been no riots, there have been no arrests, there have been no bombings, no fires set. Basically, there no public unrest, no crimes committed, no destruction of property. It's been thoroughly clean and wholesome. Is that still true?
Oh, yes. I think there are people who have not been to sleep very much all weekend long from the continual partying, but no, this is just great. We're so happy for them, and the whole city is just enjoying this like we haven't enjoyed something since 1985. It's fabulous.
Yeah. And, I'll tell you, to help people understand this, you go back to 1975, really. 1975 through, let's go through 85, those 10 or 11 years. Royals were a contender every year. They were drawing 2 million people. And for 3 or 4 of those years, they had a rivalry with the New York Yankees that sustained everybody. 76, 77, 78, or 3 years in a row, then a year off, and then finally beat the Royals in 1980 and went to their first World Series and lost to the Phillies. But back then, the Royals owned Kansas City. And I lived there for 10 years, and it's kind of like Pittsburgh in the sense that when the sports teams are doing well, there is a unity in them. I mean, the way I phrased it was amazing how a community can derive so much of its self-esteem, and I mean this in a good way, from the performance of the sports teams. Just the teams winning made everybody feel like they were part of it. It's a small enough community that everybody really felt like they had a hand in it. It was an amazing thing to be part of. Meeting and surpassing all audience expectations all the time. Rush Limbaugh here at 800-282-2882. The email address, lrushbaugh@eibnet.com. Got some polling data in from New Hampshire. This is in the thehill.com, and what is the poll? Monmouth University. They never put that in the opening paragraph. You got to dig down to find it. That's why I'm always... And here are the numbers. But no, let me do it. Here's the headline of the story. Rubio's polling numbers skyrocket in New Hampshire. I said, whoa, man, what is this? I mean, that's all it says. Rubio's polling numbers skyrocket in New Hampshire. The top of the story does not have a list of the candidates and their percentages. So that headline, oh man, Rubio, okay, after the debate, Rubio skyrockets. Holy cow, what's happening in New Hampshire? That's big. Trump was leading there. What happened here? So you read, and you find out that Rubio's in third place at 13%. And do you know who's in first place? That would be the Trumpster. He's in first place at 26%, and that's unchanged. Now, why isn't the headline, Trump continues to soar in New Hampshire? Well, we know the answer. But still, Rubio's polling numbers skyrocket. Okay, so what happened? I said Rubio tripled his support to 13% from last September. September to October, now November. So the poll was taken in October. So in 1 month, Rubio's tripled. So 13 divided by 3 is 4 point something. So Rubio's basically 4 points. Now is at 13. In second place, you can't find the name in the story, Ben Carson, 16%. And one of the real kind of surprises in this, a name also not mentioned till you read deep, John Kasich, is in fourth place at 11%. So in a story with a headline, Rubio's polling numbers skyrocket in New Hampshire. Here's a pull quote from the story. Celebrity businessman Trump, who has been fading recently, but still leads the GOP race overall. He faded in one poll in where? Iowa. To Ben Carson. But they want to write that story. They want to write that Trump's fading. They want to write that Trump's peaked. They want to write that Trump's blown it. They want to write that Trump is yesterday's news. Celebrity businessman Trump, who has been fading recently, but still leads the GOP race overall, maintains his lead in New Hampshire with 26% of likely primary voters saying they will support him. Headline, Rubio's polling number skyrockets. So it's Trump 26, Carson at 16. And you have to hunt to find these numbers. Rubio 13%, Kasich 11%, Ted Cruz is at 9%, Jeb Bush, the laxative candidate, at 7%, Carly Fiorina and Chris Christie at 5%, and Rand Paul 3%, Charlie Rose at 1%. I just threw Charlie Rose in there. I'm sorry. I don't mean to pound on poor Charlie, but they want to portray Charlie Rose to us as Mr. Sophisticated, Mr. Intelligent, This is the guy who didn't even know that Hillary Clinton has been lying about the video in Benghazi. He tried to take Rubio to task for you. After the debate last week, Rubio said, the media tells us Hillary Clinton had a great week. It's a debate performance, and the Benghazi Commission had a great week. Yeah, the week she was exposed as a liar. And Charlie Rose, that's a serious charge, don't you think? What do you mean serious charge? She did lie. She lied about the video. By the way, there's even more condemning news about that now. And that is that, who was it? Was it the State Department? Was it CIA? Somebody told, some other government agency, implored Hillary, do not go out there and blame this video. And she did it anyway. Here's Vivian in Chicago as we stick with the phones. Hey, Vivian, I'm glad you waited. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Rush. It's such an honor to talk to you.
Thank you very much.
So my comment about your discussion this morning on the Clinton hacks organizing the CNBC debate.
Yes.
Well, it just seems to me that those gotcha questions aren't really designed for the candidates at that debate. They're designed to trip up whoever the candidate is who debates Hillary Clinton.
Meaning what?
Well, that they're going to keep those questions handy and their answers, and then whoever the candidate is who was in the CNBC debate, they'll use something from that to try to make them stumble, and kind of like they did to Romney with the question about...
I see what you're saying. Yes. Well, yeah, I think that's a good point. That whenever we get to the actual presidential debates, these questions are going to be repeated. The questions in the CNBC debate, whoever the Republican nominee is, same type of questions will be asked of the Republican. You have said of Mrs. Clinton that she lied about the use of video. Don't you think that's a rather serious charge? Mrs. Clinton, your hair today looks absolutely stunning. Is that a new wig? Would never be asked. The reference to how good her hair looks might happen, but the fact that it's a wig never would be mentioned. It was the CIA. It was the CIA implored her not to blame the video. But Vivian's point is that no way these people are embarrassed and ashamed of what they ask, because they're going to do it again when it comes time to have the Republican candidate versus Hillary debate. My adopted hometown's next, Sacramento, California. Sandy, your turn. Hello.
Good morning, Mr. Limbaugh. This is such an honor to talk to you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Yes, I called to tell you how much I appreciate you writing those books. I have two nephews that if you'd ever told me they would sit down and read a book, I would have never believed it. But they argue over who's going to have the book.
Really? How old are these nephews of yours?
I have one that's 8 and one that's 10. And they won't even let their cousins, their nieces, they won't even let them read it.
And heretofore, up to now, they have not shown an interest in reading very much?
Never. I mean, they didn't even read comic books.
Whoa.
I mean, and they love your book. I mean, they sit and, they talk about it. I mean, That's the whole mealtime, is listening to them talk about your book.
Well, I can't thank you enough. Vivian, Sandy, I'm so appreciative you got through.
I tell you, and you getting my boys to read is an honor. And I tell you what, there are parents and aunts and uncles out there that love you for this.
Well, it sounds like a miracle out there.
It is a miracle. I didn't think they would ever sit down with a book and actually sit there and not even turn the television on or play their games. They're reading your book.
Well, let me ask you this, Sandy. What kind of efforts did you or their parents make in trying to get them to read before this came? I mean, how did you learn that they're not crazy about reading? They're still pretty young. How did you figure that out?
Yes, I understand that, but, when they don't want to read their own homework assignments and things like that, that was a good inclination there. But they listen to you with me when they're here on the radio all the time.
Wow.
And they heard you talking about your book. So I was able to get up enough money to go buy one because I didn't think they'd really read it. But now they won't even let me borrow it.
You mean you only have one to go around everybody?
Well, I'm on disability, so I couldn't afford to get enough for all of them.
Oh, that's a shame.
So I figured I get one.
Oh. Well, we can take care of that. If you'll hang on here when Mr. Sturdley, when we finish here, Mr. Sturdley will pick up, and we'll send you some. We'll send you the new one. I'll tell you what. We'll send you the Rush Limbaugh and the Star Spangled Banner.
That is fantastic.
And I'm going to send you a couple. We just got them because of popular demand. Some of these young people reading the books have literally been begging us for a stuffed animal of Liberty the horse, a cuddly stuffed animal. So we commissioned one. We had, I can't tell you the number of prototypes. I can't tell you the number of manufacturers we took submissions from. And we settled on one, and it's now available at rushrevere.com. And I'll enclose a couple of those, too. Folks, and Sandy, thanks. Don't hang up here. Mr. Snerdley will get your address in my adopted hometown. I'm not kidding you. We get a lot of these. A lot of feedback from parents who say that until these books came along, their kids were not interested in reading. And when that first started happening, I thought they were just being nice. I just thought they were just being complimentary and all that. But we get so many of them, so many comments like that your books are the first my kids have actually wanted to read. There's so many of those that I actually now believe that it's true. I mean, I'm not trying to impugn the people that said it. People complimentary and they say nice things. But we're getting so much of that I think it actually is a phenomena related to these books. I think there's something about them that these kids get into, and this, if I may say so, it's the design. I mean, this was the whole plan, was to write these books in such a way that the reader is not just reading somebody recite historical facts, but the way the books are written, the reader is taken back in time to these events via time travel with a funny, sarcastic talking horse and actually meets the people who made this country. And they get to talk to them. Well, the students in the book get to talk, the reader gets to experience it, but they're taken back to these events, and it actually is putting the reader in the story. And we have an added benefit in these books. The stories happen to be true, and they happen to be true about the founding of the country. And we get a lot of accolades, folks, not denying that. And we get a lot of praiseworthy reaction to these books. But one of the most meaningful is what Sandy here said, that her nephews didn't have the slightest interest in reading until these books hit. And now they can't get the books out of their hands and they want the next one to come out soon and so forth. It's such a pleasant reaction that we're getting from everybody who's read these. And Sandy, I thank you so much. I'm grateful that you were able to get through today. I have to take a brief time out now once again because this is the fastest 3 hours in media, and it just rolls on. I'll be right back after this. I know it really is moving to me. I'm kind of speechless when I hear this stuff, but it's amazing. We had a caller last week. His son was dyslexic, who just loves these books. And Sandy here, she said 6 and 8 years old, something like that, and 6 and 10 and 8 or whatever, and they don't like 8 and 10, and they don't like comic books, but they like these books. If you've got a young kid, 8 to 10, doesn't like comic books, you might think you've got a problem. But yet they like these books. And you know why, folks? I'm going to tell you exactly why. This is the strategery that we had in putting this whole series of books together. Of course, the point is to teach the truth about the founding of this country to young people so that they have a base knowledge and understanding as they're going through school and hearing the opposite. These books, the Rush revered time travel adventures with exceptional American series, these books are immersive, which means it's not just somebody reciting facts or trying to tell interesting stories. The reader is taken right to the events that we cover from book to book to book. And the reason I think these kids like it so much is when you're young is when you have your imagination's running wild. You don't have any boundaries because you don't know yet what you can't do. You don't know yet what you want to do or don't want to do, but everything in the world fascinates you. So an adult reading a book about time travel already, come on, get serious. To a young person, cool, man. An adult, what do you mean talking horse? To a young person, talking horse, wow, sarcastic to boot, funny as heck. Even though there was a TV show once with a talking horse, Mr. Ed, and it was pretty popular among adults at the time because Mr. Ed was kind of a sexist, and it was okay to be back in those days. And his owner was a dork, named Wilbur. The horse, again, was the cool one. But no, they're immersive, and since young people have these wild imaginations and incredible dreams about possibilities, all of this stuff to them is just really cool. And I picked that up from some of the feedback as well. So anyway, thanks to everybody that's sharing all that feedback with us. We're immensely proud. A lot of work goes into these, and we really like them ourselves too. So it's great to get this kind of feedback. Here's Jeff in Wilmington, North Carolina. Great to have you, sir. Appreciate your patience. Hello.
Hey, Rush. How you doing?
Good. Thank you.
Linda, add on to your point with Bill Gates and the wealthy being fearful of losing their money, and that's where socialism comes in. Socialism basically creates a situation where it impedes people's ability to acquire capital in order to compete with them. And if no one has the ability to compete with them, they're going to be pretty well situated up at the top where they are, and they don't have to worry about it. You know how that's true? I'll tell you how that really works is if the rich people you're talking about, rather than wishing everybody could experience it, are the kind that say, I've got mine, now let's shut it down. Which essentially is what you're saying. You got people who would rather not be competed with or against, and high tax rates. I've always maintained that the income tax is the number one obstacle to the creation of wealth in the country because it is a tax on your work. And the more you work, the harder you work, and the more you earn, the more you pay. It's almost a punitive kind of thing, which is why I've always objected to punishing achievement, which is what the tax code does. But there's no question here that Jeff is exactly right about this. The income tax particularly is one of the greatest deterrents to the acquisition of wealth that there is. You don't know any billionaires that have gotten that money by being paid that money. They don't work for anybody. That's the point. Paul Ryan says he needs an ozone machine to get the cigarette smoke odor out of the speaker's office. Boehner smokes cigarettes. Ryan has also ruled out quick
immigration reform. Says he doesn't think that they can trust the president on this. We trust him on the budget, though? Why not? Engaged in a relentless and unstoppable pursuit of the truth. It's the Excellence in Broadcasting Network and Rush Limbaugh here at the Limbaugh Institute for Advanced Conservative Studies. Great to have you here, as always. Telephone number is 800-282-2882 and the email address lrushbaugh@eibnet.com. Let me do just a little, a quick, this is bouncing off the income tax statement I just made. The income tax, in my humble opinion, is one of the greatest obstacles to the acquiring of wealth, the amassing of wealth that we have. The phrase robber barons. Does it ring a bell? Mr. Snerdley. And this is not to determine who knows or doesn't know. It's just a series of pop quiz questions leading to something. Who were they? Who were the robber barons? Okay, very good. Okay, that's right. Okay, the industrial titans of the late 1800s and the 30s and the 1920s and 30s were the robber barons. People like John D. Rockefeller, Andrew Carnegie, Andrew Mellon, Joseph Kennedy, but he may actually have been one. And, of course, John Pierpont Morgan. J.P. Morgan, he wasn't an industrialist. J.P. Morgan at one time had more money than the United States Treasury. At one point, the United States Treasury actually borrowed money from John Pierpont Morgan. One of the best, if you want to read a quick, relatively quick, one of the greatest stories about J.P. Morgan, without having to read a book, is a cover story on the guy done by Cigar Aficionado about 10 years ago, I think. It's one of the greatest pieces on John Pierpont Morgan ever. The man loved debt. Everybody was indebted to him. He lent money like crazy. He wasn't worried about people not paying it back because the vast majority of people always do. And if they don't, you got goons to go get what they owe you. But he amassed so much money. At one point, the federal government had to borrow some from him. Now, this is back in the 1800s. Now, the robber barons traditionally are taught about as a bunch of mean, selfish, rich people who, when you ask people how the robber barons get their money, they're regarded as thieves. Yes, they are. Robber barons? What do you mean they're not regarded as thieves? Robber baron. That means, so who did they steal their money from? The whole mode of thinking is alive and well today. The Democrat Party wants you to believe that everybody has wealth, stole it from today's middle class. Or yesterday's middle class. And the math has never worked out for me. The idea that the poor used to be rich, but the rich stole the money from them? I bet the poor don't even remember the days they were rich. The math just doesn't work out, but it sells. It just sells. Like there's one of the lead items on Drudge right now. There's some guy who took his video camera out to the beach in California. One of these man-on-the-street things, like Jay Leno used to do. I mean, any number of people do them. And they started talking to Hillary Clinton supporters and telling them all that Hillary Clinton was an avid supporter of Sharia law. And they all said, oh, that's great, so am I. Love Sharia law. It's clear they don't even know what it is. So it's just another way of illustrating how, I don't think stupid, just how ignorant so many people are. But the whole term robber baron is designed to denigrate that group of people. But look at what they did. Why is there Rockefeller Center, for example? You know what Rockefeller Center is and what it consists of? It's massive. And it was all built by John D. Rockefeller. He had so damn much money. He couldn't possibly have spent it on himself. So he built this massive thing for New York City, not to mention the parks, not to mention the museums, many of which still stand today. All of these old robber barons built much more than government has. They were the biggest philanthropists in the world, but they had enough left over to also be the most conspicuous of spenders. I mean, the Vanderbilts, the railroad people. I know John D. Rockefeller gave dimes to poor people, but that's in addition to everything else. But you look at the Vanderbilts, the Breakers, the mansion in Newport, Rhode Island. They built that for basically 4 weeks a year, and they would go in the summertime when the city got too hot and go up to Rhode Island, and it took railroad cars to transport all the silver, all the plates, all the drinking glasses, and all that just for 4 weeks. And the railroad cars took it back to wherever it went. I mean, they had, this was pre-income tax, and they just had amassed incredible amounts of wealth. And there have always been people around that think like Democrats do. We thought it was unfair and unjust, and so there were all kinds of policies put into play to begin the process of taking that money away from them. And then what happened? They all started foundations. The Fords, the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, the Mellons, foundation after foundation. And slowly and surely, the left took over all of them. And all of these people, if there was a politics of the day, they would have all been vastly more conservative, especially the way they live their lives, than liberal. But the left saw these foundations, and they just gradually, as the founders died, and as the progeny became worthless, which always happens. I mean, at some point, third or fourth generation, it's just a bunch of worthless duds, and left to their own devices, they'll lose everything. By that time, the left moves in and takes over the foundations, and that's how liberalism spreads its tentacles and encroaches. But who did they steal from? They didn't steal anything. They discovered oil, any number of the railroads. They were all said to be people exploited people and used them and were mean, and their achievements are always impugned and glossed over. And now we've reached the point where people like Barack Obama, who couldn't do 0.1% what any of the truly great in this country have done, are considered to be as such because they've found a way to get their hands on the United States Treasury and treat the money as their own. Now, take a look at Obamacare. It has never enjoyed the support of anywhere near a majority of people. It can honestly be said that Obamacare has never been supported by even a narrow majority of the people of this country. The latest Investors Business Daily poll has found that 52% of the public opposes Obamacare. That's up from when the question was last asked in August. According to the poll, 52% of independents oppose the law, as do 92% of Republicans. Among Democrats, fewer than 1 in 5 oppose it. The Obamacare polls are far worse among the middle class and less educated, who are supposed to be its main beneficiaries. 58% of those making between $50,000 and $75,000 a year say they oppose the law. That's the highest of any income bracket. And why? Why is that? They're as the story says, they're supposedly the beneficiaries because they're the ones getting creamed. They're the ones who see their premiums doubling and tripling. The same thing with the deductibles. The deductibles are so high you never get to use them, meaning you're paying a good percentage of your treatment, which you thought you weren't going to be paying much of anything before Obamacare became law. Now, the Obamacare third open enrollment period started essentially today. It's November 1st. Which was yesterday, Sunday. And people are they're not signing up. They're wary. They are confused. They're unhappy about it. And now this from the Daily Caller, Obamacare premium costs are going to rise 20% on average in 2016 instead of the 7.5% increase claimed by CBO and the Obama administration. The discrepancy is because the government excluded price data for 3 of the 4 Obamacare health insurance plans when the officials issued their recent forecast claiming enrollees would face only a 7.5% increase in 2016. When data for all 4 plans are included, the premium costs rise an average of 20% next year. That's on top of what they've already risen, and people can't afford, they couldn't afford the first cost. Now, there are 4 Obamacare insurance plans: Silver, Bronze, Gold, and Platinum. When announcing the 2016 increases for these plans, Obamacare propagandists only calculated and communicated the price increase of one plan, the Silver plan, and they said it's going to go up 7.5%. They made it sound like the Silver plan increase was the same across the board. They were lying. One plan goes up 7.5%, the Silver plan. They purposely didn't factor in the other 3, the Bronze, Gold, and Platinum, and when taken together, all 4 Obamacare plans explode the premium increase up to 20%. And this is why it's unpopular. You look at the way this was sold. And by the way, people heard this. They heard Obama say their premiums were going to go down $2,500. Many people thought it wasn't going to cost them anything. Many people thought Obamacare was going to give them health insurance for nothing. Many people thought that Obamacare was only going to insure the uninsured. Many people thought that it was going to be cheaper, easier, because that's how it was sold. They were lied to from top to bottom on this. Now they find out they can't afford it. Now they find out that some of the co-ops and the exchanges are insolvent. Now they find out that premiums are doubling and tripling, and the only option they have is to pay the fine, which still, for a few short more years, is less expensive than having the policy. It's an absolute total mess, and it does need to be totally scrapped. And it's something that ought to be part of the 2016 presidential race. The problem there is that the Republicans since 2010 have been promising to repeal it, and they have not kept the promise. They have made mere efforts. All they've done is say that they're going to repeal it, and they've had a couple of votes, but there's never really been any impetus behind it because it's an entitlement. Republicans are afraid what the Democrats and the media will say if they're accused of taking an entitlement away from people. Meanwhile, over here is a ready-made, and it has been since 2010, a ready-made majority coalition for the Republican Party to attach itself to. And that is a majority in opposition to Obamacare. Something the vast majority of the people in this country want no part of. And yet, both parties in Washington seem joined at the hip on forcing it on people anyway. Another story, this is from WorldNet Daily. United Nations is planning on a court to judge the United States for violations of climate justice. Kid you not, at the upcoming UN Climate Summit in Paris, participating nations have prepared a treaty that would create an international tribunal of climate justice, giving third world countries the power to haul America into a global court with enforcement powers. Congress would be bypassed. Policies once left to sovereign nations could be turned over to a United Nations body if the U.S. and its allies approve the proposed deal in Paris during the summit, which is scheduled for November 30th through December 11th. according to the proposed draft text of the climate treaty. And in this, by the way, we find out why the hoax of global warming will not die. Because all it is yet another technique, opportunity for the United Nations to fleece the United States after proclaiming the United States guilty of immorality and injustice, the result of which was being a superpower. It's time to cut the United States down to size. The difference this time is that we have elected a president who agrees that the United States is guilty of injustice and immorality, and has been since its founding, has not been deserving of its superpower status. We have a president, a Democrat Party, which believes that the United States of America and its capitalist economy is the greatest contributor to destructive climate change. We have elected a Democrat president and a supporting Democrat Party which believes the United States needs to be cut down to size for all the transgressions it has committed since its founding. And the global warming hoax is a mechanism by which the United Nations and the rest of the world can point to America and say, guilty. It's time to pay up. The rest of the world is poor and impoverished because of you. You are not a superpower because there's anything great about you. You are a superpower because you are a robber baron. You have stolen what you have from indigenous peoples all over the world, and it's time now for them to get it back. And so they're going to set up a court based on page 19 of a 34-page document. An International Tribunal of Climate Justice is hereby established to address cases of non-compliance of the commitments of developed countries, parties on mitigation, adaptation. It's a way to find us guilty of crimes, climate change. Rush Limbaugh, the EIB network in the afternoon, and the Eastern and Central time zones in the morning. In the Mountain and Pacific. Well, no, it's afternoon in the Mountain time zone as well. Barely. Here's Robert in Greenville, South Carolina. Welcome to the EIB network. Hi.
Hey, Rush, thanks. Good news. Bill Gates is going to be at Clemson University this afternoon, I guess spilling his drivel to the students there, so at least he'll be spreading the
Wait. Clinton University?
No, did I say Clinton? I meant Bill Gates. I'm sorry.
Clemson? I thought you said...
Yeah, at Clemson University. Yeah, he's going to be there this afternoon.
Yeah. I thought you said Clinton University. I said, what did I miss?
Well, no, although they could change it. It wouldn't surprise me a lot. But, hey, anyway, the reason I called...
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken, isn't the current RNC debate system the one they fixed from 2012? Didn't they come out after the Candy Crowley thing and the George Stephanopoulos deal where they said, we're going to fix this because obviously it was, slanted too heavily to the left, and yet this is what we wound up with again? Is this the best they can do?
Your memory on this may be better than mine. I don't remember that. What I remember them saying was that they were going to restructure the way the debates looked, like who got into them, because there were too many people on stage. Whatever they said they were going to fix, they didn't. Whatever it was. I don't remember them saying they were going to let the left have such a strong hand in moderating. If you remember that, then that's...
Well, no, I thought they were going to do the opposite, that they were going to try and fix it to where they had a more receptive host to the debates as opposed to the ones that were so...
Well, where are they going to do that? Where are they going to find those?
Yeah, well, I think Fox is about as close as they're going to get, and that's just another...
Well, they thought they did. In fact, I'm sure they thought the Fox debate was going to be a fix.
I heard someone suggest that you, Michael Medvedev, and there was a third that they were saying should host a debate. Maybe it was Cruz or somebody said that, and I thought, well, that's an idea. That would be a ratings buster if ever there was one.
You think so?
Why don't you guys get together and do it?
I don't know.
Rush, come on, man. You can find one evening. You don't need
No. That's not it. No. I think if I moderate a debate, it ought to be a Democrat debate.
Well, that'd be nice, too.
That's I mean, if you're going to even this out and we're going to make this fair, you let me moderate the next debate with Hillary and the socialist in the abs. And we'll be back. saga continues. I love that. A man, a legend, a way of life. I'm kind of in a good mood. One of my favorite TV shows resumes tonight. Major Crimes. Fall season. It's the spin-off of The Closer. It's on TNT. I just love this show. There's 8 shows. 8 of my favorite shows are on Monday night. And when I saw that Major Crimes resumes today, I said, hey, I was going to be disappointed there are any more World Series games. But we got Major Crimes tonight, plus Monday Night Football. And look at this. Christian Science Monitor. Antarctica is actually gaining ice, says NASA. Is global warming over? No, of course not. We're not supposed to assume that. We only assume when the ice is melting that there is global warming. But when the ice is expanding, no. That does not mean there isn't any global warming. See how this works? A new NASA study found that Antarctica, the South Pole, for those of you in Rio Linda, has been adding more ice than it has been losing, challenging other research, including that of the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, that concludes the Earth's southern continent is losing land ice overall. In a paper published in the Journal of Glaciology on Friday. You have your subscription? Who do you think subscribes to this? And are they paid subscribers or are they just gifted this thing? Who in the world? Well, anyway. The Journal of Glaciology on Friday. Researchers from NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center, because all the space flights that go to the South Pole. University of Maryland, College Park. The engineering firm Sigma Space Corporation offer a new analysis of satellite data that show a net gain of 112 billion tons of ice a year from 1992 to 2001. Over a 10-year period, 112 billion tons of new ice every year. That gain slowed to 82 billion tons of ice per year between 2003 and 2008. Remember those stupid explorers that thought the ice was melting and they started an expedition down there and they got stuck in the ice? It took 2 icebreakers. Chicom's even had one that got stuck in the ice. To try to rescue those fools. Okay, so Antarctica is gaining ice. Is global warming over? Not quite, scientists say. Not quite. No. You shouldn't think that. Only when the ice is melting can we conclude that global warming is happening. The new study results show the fallibility of current climate change measuring tools and challenges current theories about the cause of sea level rise, which there isn't any. Now, this is not a conservative site reported. This is the Christian Science Monitor, which is every bit and every part member of the left-wing media as anything else is. Jeremy, in the wilds of East Texas, it's great to have you on the EIB network. Hello, sir.
Hey, Rush, how are you doing?
Just fine. Thank you very much for calling, sir.
Listen, I've got a lot to say, and so I'm just going to launch right into it.
Do that. That's exactly what you should do. Just launch. Just get in, get it, and get out. Go for it.
Thanks. I was going to talk about the Cruz electability. I've heard people talk, and I've seen on social media where people say, I'm not sure Cruz can win in the general, and the news media has been promoting Rubio and some of these other candidates. And I just want to say, Cruz started out in the state of Texas when he ran for the Senate at 2% in the polls. The margin of error was 3%. And he went on to beat David Dewhurst, the lieutenant governor of Texas, by double digits, and then turned around and won the general election by double digits. So, this is that part is a frustration to me that people keep, they can't seem to take this. Even they make excuses even after the debate that Marco Rubio or this candidate's going to win the nomination. That's my first point. My second point is what you just talked about the climate change court. This goes to the issue of what Cruz will do when he's in office. When he was the Solicitor General of the state of Texas, he actually fought in a case called Medellin versus the state of Texas, where he fought the World Court in the Supreme Court and won that case, where George Bush was trying to tell the state of Texas that we had to stop, that the Texas had to stop an execution because the World Court said so and because of international law and that we had to abide by international law. And Cruz shut it down and basically litigated that and won. So there's two examples right there of why we need Ted Cruz to be our next president. Number three is, Obama has done, Cruz has actually said he's going to be to conservatives what Obama has been to liberals, and he's going to govern like that. He's already said that when he takes office, he's going to overturn all of the illegal executive orders. What other candidate has said that? I don't think I've heard a single one of them. He's the only one talking about trying to undo. They speak in general terms about fixing Washington and all this kind of stuff, but he has actually come out and said, I'm going to do this.
Well, Ted Cruz scares them all. Ted Cruz scares a lot of people because they're not conservative. Ted Cruz means it when he says he's going to try to get government out of people's lives, when he's going to try to reduce the size of government, when he's going to try to reduce the financial take that comes to government. He means it. And most everybody makes their living off government. Republican, Democrat, whatever, they make their living off of it. They make their living governing it, expanding it, writing laws for it, or what have you. Ted Cruz is serious about wanting to de-emphasize it. I love this argument that he's not electable, he can't win. Mitt Romney was, right? John McCain, there's somebody could win. Right. All these people they tell us that can't win, they singularly set out and try to destroy. Ted Cruz has overcome odds, as you described, in Texas. If he can't win, how did he become senator? But it's I don't know. It's a fascinating thing to watch. For the longest time, conservatives thought the Republican Party was their home and where their beliefs resonated and echoed. And it's really a slap in the face whenever you, as a conservative, whatever it is, whenever that time, when you realize the Republican Party actually is not for the things you're for. That is an interesting day for whoever, whenever the day happens, and it happens to every conservative, when they realize that the Republican Party is actually not you. And if you've never had any doubts, all you have to do is take a look at the way they all react to Ted Cruz. It's with palpable anger and fear, and it's irrational. Here, give you an example. This is Boehner. This is Grab Soundbite 13, CNN State of the Union yesterday. And this is just a small example. The D.C. establishment despises Ted Cruz. If Ted Cruz weren't around, they could sell this budget deal as they want. They're trying to tell people it reforms entitlements and it reduces spending and it does all this. And the thing is that Ted Cruz is running around calling them out on it. Saying, no, it doesn't do that. And that makes them mad. So Boehner's on State of the Union yesterday with Dana Bash, who said the budget deal that you struck just this week calls for an increase of $80 billion in federal spending over 2 years. That's caca. It's much more than that. In exchange for a variety of cuts, Ted Cruz said it's a complete and utter surrender. John Boehner's golden parachute will certainly cement his legacy, but it's a slap in the face to conservatives.
That's just total nonsense. We've got real entitlement reform in this agreement. We've got a big group of members who need more money for our national defense. And all the increases in spending are offset with spending reductions elsewhere in the government.
How does that, folks, the numbers don't add up that way. The net spending increases are significant. There isn't any entitlement reform. The national debt, by the time this deal is 1 year old, is going to be $20 trillion. Where in the world is anything being cut? Entitlements or anything else? Nothing is. You know why this budget was done? And Politico has a story. They're just smiling ear to ear on this story. Behind the secret budget deal that drove conservatives mad. And they're just so happy at the Politico. That's one of the biggest days they ever have is when they can write a story detailing how angry conservatives are or how big a shaft the conservatives got. And this is one of these stories. A potential national default, John Boehner's resignation, and a resolute Barack Obama aligned to temporarily halt Washington's dysfunction. There isn't any dysfunction. Washington Democrats and Republicans are working together just fine, folks. I'm watching TV. I'm not watching. The TV's on, and there's a story on a tiger up there. You know, when I read something over the weekend, somebody studied a bunch of cats. You know, I have a little cat, a little Abyssinian. And whoever did the study said cats, if they could kill their human masters, they would. They're too small. But they're constantly sizing you up, trying to figure out what it would take to take you out. And I look at my cat in a whole different way now when it's staring at me. You know, I'm thinking of renaming the cat to Predator. Just found it cute and funny as it could be. Anyway. And I love it when we kick off a brand new broadcast week with a grand slam home run. And we have done it. I just have a couple of things I didn't get to today, but that's what tomorrow is for. A couple of them involved that World Series game last night, too. So, anyway, got to take a brief break here of 21 hours. It'll go by fast, and we'll be back here, revved and ready to do it all over again tomorrow. See you then.